The views and opinions expressed on this program are not necessarily those of this station, JVC Broadcasting Management, or its sponsors.
With so many people living longer, the fear of outliving your money becomes a reality for many of us. Will I be a financial burden? Will I outlive my money? How will I be remembered? My name is Neil Himmelstein, president of Main Street Planning Group. Please contact me by visiting mainstreetplanninggroup.com. That's mainstreetplanninggroup.com, or call 631-647-4694. I will introduce you to strategies that will guarantee you will not outlive your money, that can guarantee you will not be a burden on your loved ones. Through a collaborative approach, we will uncover solutions that offer tax-efficient strategies, lifetime income, and legacy planning, choice, organization, direction, and education. That is the code we stand behind. Contact mainstreetplanninggroup.com. That's mainstreetplanninggroup.com, or call 631-647-4694. And listen to me every Friday at 3 p.m. as I host the Main Street Code for Financial Success, right here on 103.9 LI News Radio. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Main Street Code for Financial Success. I'm your host, Neil Himmelstein. I'm here every Friday at 3 o'clock. If you miss an episode, you can go to my website, themainstreetcode.com, where I have some YouTube replays, or Apple or Spotify. If you're driving in your car and you want to hear some podcasts, go to Apple, go to Spotify, and you can reboot some of the old broadcasts, or if you happen to miss it, you can catch up on a new one. We work with hundreds of advisors across the United States with their insurance needs, and whether they're CPAs or attorneys that have us look through policies, or other financial advisors who are looking for an outlet for different insurance products, life insurance, disability, long-term care, and annuities. We are experts across the United States. And today, we are and by the way, our code stands for choice, organization, direction, and education. And we like working with lots of different financial professionals that help solve some of your problems and some of your needs and what you need to do with your personal life and or your business life. And with no further ado, we have a wonderful guest today, Anthony Citrolo. Anthony, say hello.
Hi, Neil. Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Thank you. And Anthony is the founder of, what's the name of your group?
The company's the NYBB Group. We've been around 21 years, and we work primarily with clients who, and mostly our clients are family or founder-owned businesses, folks who are looking for an exit strategy, considering what the future is for their business, maybe looking to grow that business, or perhaps looking to put it on the market and see what the value could be. We help them with business valuation, going through due diligence, and help that owner. A lot of times it's their largest asset, so we treat it as such, and we want to make sure they maximize it.
Right. And, a lot of people go, what I hate is people say, exit strategy. Well, I'm not ready for that.
Sure.
I just started my business, and we both know some people that in the last couple of years, things didn't go as planned. They passed away unexpectedly, or they became disabled, or
it's
they
unfortunate.
go through divorces, or they have a partner. You were telling me beforehand, the guy has a partner, they're best friends, and all of a sudden they're not friends, yet they got to see each other to do business together.
You never know really what's going to happen in life. Oftentimes people put their blood, sweat, and tears into their company. You should be ready to exit at any moment. We tell folks it would be smart to have an exit strategy when you start the business. For a couple of reasons. One, you don't know what's going to happen to you personally, and God forbid anything happens that you don't want to happen. But also, we've had a lot of instances where you build a business, it's a couple of years old, and someone comes knocking on your door and says, hey, I'd like to purchase your company. I'm going to give you a boatload of money. Right. And a lot of folks just are not ready for that event. And if you're not ready, sometimes you can't take advantage of what may be one of your best exits ever.
Right. When's the worst time to sell a business?
The worst time, there's a lot of worst times to sell a business. I think when the worst time to sell a business is when you're really not prepared.
When you have to, right?
Yeah, when you're not prepared, when you have to sell it, when you're forced to sell it because you don't have your T's crossed, you don't have your I's dotted, and clearly you probably don't have your maximum value at stake there.
That's exactly what I want to do. So one of the things that, when you talk about business valuations, we talk about knowing your value. Mm-hmm. Know your value is a big deal. And there's a lot of things that go into a valuation of a business, such as, I know how much money I made, and I know, I watch a lot of Shark Tank, and I like to relate it to people that hear how many times earnings. People know that, the problem, with doing radio, you have a lot of people who may not think, but when you think of Shark Tank, they talk about how many times earnings, how much money they make, how many times, and they think, well, that's the value of their business. Whether it's a one-time multiple, a five-time multiple, three-time, that's part of it. But there's a lot of other things that go into the value of the business. Can you talk about some of that?
Sure, plenty of things that go in. And unfortunately, people are somewhat confused a lot of times by perhaps the Shark Tank episodes, which are staged to a certain extent, and they have folks who may end up with somewhat we consider unrealistic outcomes. And sometimes they're confused because maybe they're looking at price earnings ratios that are on the market, and they're a smaller company. You're not going to get that price earnings ratio for your company that is 5% of what the size is of a larger company. But some of the component parts of your value, of course, is what your adjusted earnings are, and a lot of the component parts of that include how strong is your management team. Do you have a management team? Because
you
have people. Because today, talent is almost as valuable as the business.
Well, you
have no business without the talent.
You're absolutely right. So if you're acquiring a business, or if you're being looked at as a business, one of the things they're going to look at as a value is how strong is your management team or your employees, because they're a tremendous asset to your company.
Absolutely, and they don't want just an organization chart. They really want to know how strong those folks are in terms of what their ability is in their specific positions. A lot of times, folks will have a CFO, and you got to see how strong that CFO is. We do a lot of industrial companies. Think about this: an industrial company like somebody who's an HVAC company, they're looking at the management team and everything. You know what they're looking at? They're looking at the technicians. It's hard to get someone to fix something today.
Right. So
they're looking, hey, how long has this person been with you? What are their capabilities? What level are they on? Can they operate independently? And a lot of times folks will make a decision. That'll be one of the negative points if it's not emphasized as one of your assets in your business.
And how about certifications? And
absolutely.
It's funny because I had a gentleman on the air a month ago, a really good guy that we really bonded very well. Young gentleman. He's bought 3 different businesses, and his main business is water restoration. But he also owns a plumbing business for the plumbing licenses and everything else. He's bought these franchises to feed into his business. So the licensing, that's a big asset as well. And then how about marketability or vision or what their, I hate to say their brand necessarily, but their presence in the market, marketing and everything else.
It's important. One thing you said about vision, when folks are looking at another person's company, they're really boiling it down to 3 different facts. They're looking at, number one, net cash flow, which is important. Second thing, they're assessing are risk factors. A lot of different risk factors, whether you have intellectual property or whether you have competitors nearby, or whether you have a lease that's coming to an end, or whether you have the right amount of talent. The third thing they look at, which I always say is key, they don't want to pay on it, is it scalable? Do you have a game plan? Do you have some vision? And a lot of times the owners will say, well, the vision should be the person who's going to be the acquirer. I said, no, the vision has to be yours. You have to tell them really what the future could look like for a business that was developed. And a lot of folks do not have that in place.
No, I agree. Well, I find it very interesting, particularly with a lot of the people we travel with. Talk about accountants.
Sure.
Okay. So many accounting firms have been merged, gobbled up with bigger firms. Insurance agencies are buying up insurance agencies. There's a lot of mergers going on. Some of them are small business, some of them are big. And I know the first question, I've been approached by several big firms, and they come to me, what's your EBITDA? Well, don't you want to ask who I am first? I mean, I just feel like sometimes it's so statistically there. But one of the things that you do, which is a huge value to people, and why would they seek out Anthony, is because, look, if I was going to sell my house and I was going to try and sell it on my own, the hardest thing is to negotiate for yourself.
Sure.
So you need that person to make your house look pretty, and they also need to know the buyer on the other end and can bring those two together, not only to position you as a company, but also position you for a buyer to purchase if you're looking to sell and or buy.
Sure, and keep in mind, Neil, most clients and most of business owners, they run a full-time business.
Right.
So they can't take lightly the fact that if they wanted to sell the company or do something else with it, that, if they're going to try to emphasize doing that on their own, they're going to take away from their full-time effort in terms of running the business. And if you deplete or decrease the value of your business just because you're almost distracted doing something else, it's going to hurt your overall value. And the second thing is, the buyers, we do due diligence on buyers. We want to make sure that they're capable, that they're qualified, they're financially qualified, they're reputable, that they have some background in business, that they can actually come and make it and execute a transaction that actually work. There are a lot of folks out there who, it would be great if they could, but a lot of times they don't have the capability.
You got it. Well, listen, you've been listening to the Main Street Code for Financial Success, and I'm your host, Neil Himmelstein. Anthony, if somebody wants to get a hold of you, how can they get a hold of you?
Sure. I'm the NYBB Group. We're located in Melville. My direct line is 516-346-5271.
And we're going to be right back after a commercial break. And again, if you need to get a hold of me, 631-647-4694, or visit me at themainstreetcode.com, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to the Main Street Code for Financial Success. If you need to get a hold of me, once again, 631-647-4694. I really encourage your comments and questions, and please, when we talk about our code, it's really putting your financial plan together with the right people and the right thing and the right situations, and planning. Planning is key. And we're here with Anthony before the break. If you didn't hear, Anthony's with what's the name of your company?
It's the NYBB Group. It's Anthony at the NYBBgroup.com, and we're in Melville, New York.
Right. And they help you. Listen, you made a big point earlier. When you're running a business, especially a family business or a smaller business, or you're worried about taxes, you're worried about payroll, you're worried about so many things. And it's taking me years, and some people it takes forever, some people never do it. It's taken me years to know, how do I delegate this little thing? Like if I really need to do succession planning, and I know Anthony was involved in this succession planning and exit planning, and I went to an exit planning seminar and this and that, and I was quite surprised where they really didn't talk about buy-sell agreements. Mm-hmm. And we just did a meeting on buy-sell agreements, basically. And I actually did a show on, does your business have a will? And I think it's vital that you plan early, when you're young and healthy, as early as you can, on planning this major asset. And you said it earlier, people don't realize that their business, I don't care whether you're a plumber, or an electrician, an accountant, an attorney, that business is probably one of the most valuable assets they have, even if it's just for producing income. Mm-hmm. That's the money. When we talked about disability, for instance, if you have a machine in your basement and all it did was print money, and it printed dollar bills, would you oil it? Would you feed it? Would you? Yeah, you take care of that thing, right?
Sure would.
People don't realize when they're running a business, that's the income feeding the family, paying the mortgage, paying the oil, paying the bills. You need to protect it with insurance. You need to cover yourself in case, what if that income doesn't come in because I fell off a mountain? What happens to my business? And I take my business personally. It's another family member to me. And I'm sure with many of the businesses you work with, you were telling me during the break about family businesses who assume that their children were going to take over, but what happens?
And look, we treat them like family. I mean, first of all, your first point, I would say 80% of the folks we see don't have buy-sell agreements, and if they happen to have a buy-sell agreement, it's probably not funded. Right, so it's useless for the most part. It's not. Right. It's not. There's nothing behind it, and they a lot of times they find out when they have to go and utilize it, and then or we come in and we say, do you have a buy sell? Because we do a check with them when we take on a client, and we look. Most of our clients, their business happens to be really one of their keys to retirement. Right, it's their biggest asset, and we also look at it from a personal standpoint because 75% of folks who actually sell their company, get out of their company, are not overly satisfied with their life afterwards. And some of it's not satisfied financially, some of it's not satisfied personally. So it's a big decision. And a lot of them thought that the next generation are taking over their business, but that is very few and far between now.
Right.
In fact, if I asked you if there's a third or fourth generation that you could think of, maybe you could think of one. So it takes a lot of upfront planning on what, in a lot of cases, accounts for 80% of someone's wealth, their business.
Yeah. What do you call what is a buy-sell agreement?
Well, I'm not an expert on it, right? But look, we want an agreement between partners if there are issues and things that happen, like if somebody has some sickness or somebody has a disability, or if one partner wants to get out of the business,
right?
What's the separation procedure? How is it going to be taken care of from a financial standpoint? And does the business live afterwards?
Right. Does it have a will? And this is what I talk about all the time. Even if it's just you running the business and you have kids, you still need to think. And I was in a business last year, maybe a couple years ago. I'm in this business, and the guy, he had his wife working there, and he had one son, and he had two other children. This business was doing $10-20 million a year. They were supplying. It started out, I don't want to tell you exactly what he does, but he supplies airplane bolts to airplane manufacturers. Mm-hmm. He takes steel rods and he cuts them and sells them, and they're doing substantial numbers.
Sure.
Well, the son is being groomed to take over the business. And I said, you really had to do an estate plan, and he's only considering everything else. Well, my kids will be fine. I have this small insurance policy over here to take care of them. Yeah, but the business is where the money is.
Sure.
And, you may think everybody's fine and dandy and everybody's cool and all kumbaya in the family. After you're gone, you find out who's really kumbaya when somebody feels like they didn't get their share or they didn't get their portion.
Sure.
So it's not just between partners. And we could talk about situations that happen every day. Something happens. If you don't prepare, if you don't have that will, if you don't have that plan, you have to put it in place. And the easiest way to fund it, as you say, is by using leverage money by buying either life insurance or disability or both or long-term care insurance to protect us if we...
Sure.
And that's where I get involved, and that's
They're
where...
going to do it. And look, so many owners we've had who did have partners, right? And they all of a sudden something happened, no disability policy, right? So I think there's some... I'm not the insurance expert there either, but the other thing is there's communication issues too. And I think a lot of these areas are not really addressed because there's really not a lot of communication between and among the partners, perhaps, and sometimes not between the owners of the business and their professional advisors. Sometimes the advisors, they wait to be called, and sometimes you really need to look at your clients and say, are they really protected? And I think it's incumbent upon them to do it. The other thing is, a lot of families, you said the son is there to take over the business, and sometimes there has not been a conversation with the son to see if he actually wants to take over the business.
Right.
And they find out after the person passes that the son really is like, hey, get me out of here. Now you really have a problem because you have no leadership whatsoever. So there's a lot of issues there that take advanced planning, and they just, look, we go in a lot of times and we speak with folks and say, hey, let's forget about selling the company. Let's do a personal and a business assessment. Let's see where you are. Are you ready to do something? Where is the business position? Then we'll look at it in the marketplace to see, what you need to do to kind of get it up to snuff. And one of the things would be hopefully, protecting them and calling in someone like yourself.
Absolutely. And the thing you need to do is, it's sort of like when you go into business with somebody, whether you bring in a partner, whether you merge, whether you're about to merge or be bought out, you need to have what we call a prenup agreement, like you were getting married.
Absolutely.
And, I had a business divorce at one point. Very ugly story, which I'll tell you. But, and believe me, it was worse than a divorce to me. I mean, it was a business divorce, and it got very, very ugly.
Sometimes it could ruin the business. It could really have some damaging effects on the business.
Absolutely. So... you need to have these prenup agreements, and you need to have these conversations, and you need outside professionals, and you need to have those people help take some of the burden off of you of having to do everything yourself. So let's have a conversation. That's what I tell everybody. Let's have a conversation. I'm not asking you to buy anything from me. It doesn't cost anything to have a conversation with me. It doesn't cost anything to have a conversation with
Neil, a lot
Anthony.
of those people, will be more objective. You may not want to hear what they want to say, but they're going to tell you the truth.
Right.
And you need somebody who's going to tell you the truth, because if you really don't, you really never know really what direction to go in.
That's a great point. And the people that are going to tell you the truth are the ones that have the experience, who have that crystal ball, because they have the experience and they've seen what's happened to other similar situations and businesses. And these are the type of people that you want to work with Anthony, because he's working with so many businesses and family businesses, not only from a history standpoint, but bringing people together in like-minded businesses is what makes you successful and makes me successful. I mean, it's just, I don't know. It's the magic formula, right?
Absolutely.
Bringing it together.
Absolutely. You got to use some common sense.
Anthony, I loved having you here. Thank you so much for coming here. How can people get a hold of you?
Neil, thanks for having me again. It's Anthony Citrolo, the NYBB Group, 516-346-5272. And it's a pleasure being with you. Thanks for having me as a guest.
Thank you. I enjoyed it. And again, you've been listening to the Main Street Code for Financial Success. 631-647-4694. If you want to get a hold of me, you can always check out previous episodes at themainstreetcode.com. Give me a call. Let me know what you're feeling, and appreciate you for listening. Have a great weekend, everybody.
The views and opinions expressed on this program are not necessarily those of this station, JVC Broadcasting Management, or its sponsors.